La realidad virtual permite ingresar a un universo ficticio del que podés formar parte e incluso ser protagonista. Tal como la conocemos, la realidad virtual comenzó en la década del 50 con la creación del prototipo Sensorama, que permitía al espectador visualizar 5 pequeñas películas mientras sus otros sentidos también recibían estímulos. A partir de entonces, la realidad virtual no ha parado de evolucionar y hoy se encuentra ampliamente diversificada, utilizándose en diferentes áreas como la medicina, la aviación y el cine. Precisamente sobre este último hablaremos hoy en Toquin TEC, con Hal Kirkland, un gran director audiovisual que utiliza la realidad virtual para crear nuevas formas de comunicarnos.
Hello, Hal. Welcome to Argentina.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much for joining us in talking. I really wanted you to hear it from your own words. How would you like to be introduced to our audience?
Yeah, I am a creative director and director, and I work independently and with a company called Hibby Dragons, a VR production company.
And how did an Australian graphic designer became involved with VR?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very long journey. I started in design as a graphic designer and worked in design for a few years, and then I wanted to work on slightly bigger projects, and then got into advertising, and then worked in advertising for over a decade and traveled to different cities working in that field. And then while I was in that field, I started to make music videos and just always experimenting with new ideas. And then some of those music videos had some early success, which was great. And then I left advertising behind and started experimenting with media art and throwing exhibitions and everything. And then went back into film, and then all of these things, I was like, what am I doing? I was experimenting with so many different things, and VR just came out of nowhere. And it was just a new, exciting realm to experiment within. And then randomly, all of the things that I'd done prior to that seemed to merge into that exact field. So, so I kind of jumped face first into it when it came around. So yeah, it was I feel very lucky that VR even exists for that very reason. Because the whole time I was working with production companies, and they were telling me, no, you have to do this one thing. Or even in advertising, you have to be an art director or you have to be a copywriter. You can't be both, and so VR was, actually you can be all of those things. It's really helpful.
And what was it that drawn you into VR specifically?
I mean, I think that just the world building idea and how immersive it is. And I think that when you, even when I saw Dactyl Nightmare way back when, on those huge headsets, back in, I don't know whether it was the 80s and the 90s or something, and I was blown away just by that whole idea. And then when it came around again and I saw the fidelity of how good it could be, and I was already into gaming and everything, that if I could create something where you can completely disappear inside it, that was just such an exciting idea.
And what do you think that it's so unique about VR in this as a tool for storytelling specifically? What do you think it's?
I think it's just this new sort of new territory to work in, and it's got a whole bunch of new considerations and rules. I think that just the fact that you are literally stepping into another world is so powerful. And I think that, I love cinema, traditional cinema, but just the fact that you can be standing, on an alien planet, or you can be getting a entirely new perspective as though you're physically there is such a visceral experience.
And what do you think has changed, from you as a director, because it's every time you are inside these interactive worlds and films, you are kind of directing the movie, right? I'm not going to have the same experience as maybe someone else because I've made different decisions while I was experiencing the same video? Like, what do you think it's going to be different as you as a creator or director?
Yeah, I think it's a lot more challenging than normal direction. I think that directing, you're given all these tools where you can cut to a close-up and then cut back to what the other person's saying, and that's still a challenge and a complete art form in its own right, but you can control exactly what people see, and so therefore telling narratives is a lot easier than throwing someone into a world where suddenly they have the agency to look in any direction they want. I think that certain experiences feed off that and benefit definitely from the freedom that people think they have, and I think that that's great, but a lot of the films that I've made, you really do have to make sure that people get the story.
So we were talking about orchestrating a group of people and a lot of technical difficulties. Like, how was it to make the One Republic video happen?
Yeah, that was a pretty major mission. We had to use a specific camera, like the Nokia Ozo. We had to shoot it in Mexico. Like all of these things were just being thrown into this project, and all of those were kind of exciting things as well. But it really meant that the idea, had to work. Like, it was even more pressure for it to work. And I think that, like, the initial idea for me really came about when I started to research what Mexico City looked like, because I'd never been there before. Mm-hmm. And they have these beautiful streets, these colorful houses and these little balconies, and there's like a lot of streets where all of these houses are really sort of facing each other, and it looks just kind of idyllic. And so when I saw these places, I was thinking, what if we told a story between, something simple between a girl and a boy, and then we moved a camera sort of from one room across the street and into another room and whatnot, and then that street we could also use as like the normal 2D thing. So, and then the whole idea was maybe we could get this in a one take, which was like the really tricky part. And everyone was like, "Oh, do you think we can?" I'm like, "I hope so." and it was just meticulous timing and detail, and I just spent, the two actors were going to get it, that the band were going to be cool with it, because they're such a massive band, and they were. The crazy thing was that, like, I had all these ideas about what the band would be doing, and then the label was going, well, we don't know, there's no guarantee whether or not they're going to do that, and then I was like, oh, just speak to them. And then someone was like, no, maybe you shouldn't speak to, all of these things. They're like, oh, maybe don't talk to the band, And then as soon as they arrived in Mexico City, because we had to show them this location, I just went straight towards them. I was like, guys, I got to tell you about this thing, and I'm going to get you excited about it, and it's VR, we're going to do this thing, and it's going to be a one take, and they were like, that sounds great. I was like, we really need you to be there on time. We can't do this whole rock star thing of rocking up at 12 midday. Like, I really need you to be there on time. And they were like, yeah, we'll be there. And, they were like 1 hour late, but that was amazing, And they were such like gentlemen and such talented people that they were so responsible for that, all of those pieces working. And then the other thing was which I really have to mention, like, there's my first AD. He was Scorsese's assistant director on like a bunch of films, and he coordinates huge crowds. And when I like gave him all of my stuff, he's like, oh, this is very detailed. I've never seen something like this before. Or as in a director kind of give me these notes. Like, it's something he usually creates. And if it wasn't for him, I'm not sure it would have been possible, because he understood it, and like maximum respect to that guy. And he really saved the day. So yeah, I mean, it was super complicated. It was might have almost been impossible had the planets not aligned. But when they did, it really turned into something magical.
And then you also work with another massive band. You work with Led Zeppelin, and this is a groupie here. Yeah. So please tell me, like, what did you find that was similar to the production to One Republic, and then completely different, right? Because it's a completely different experience.
Yeah, Led Zeppelin, that was really tricky. That was almost like the training ground for the level of complexity that I started to get used to. Hopefully I don't get used to it anymore and I can just like make a normal film with a locked off camera. But yeah, Led Zeppelin, yeah, like I was working on a website for, it was like a website idea for them. And then they go, oh, we want it to be a music video instead. And then all these other directors were pitching on it. And then I was like, well, why don't we still do this website thing? But so we like get to explore the album physical graffiti, and you can jump in the windows, and maybe you could move through the rooms, and maybe they're all like coordinated or something, like this crazy idea. And then I made this really detailed presentation, and then we sent it to them, to to the label, to the manager, to this person, and eventually it reached their castles. And the band members saw it one by one, and they're like, we like it. We like it, 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 we like it. Oh, we like it. Oh, okay, good. You like it? Okay, good. What do you like about it? No, I'm just joking. And then so I started like planning this thing, and the fact was, fortunately, it was so complicated that nobody was really paying attention. Like no one was really paying, like they couldn't possibly comprehend, they wouldn't read every page.
Just to not sound stupid, they will be like, yes, yes, I get it. Like,
yeah, they're like, yeah, this is great. And then, so I think everyone really didn't understand how ambitious it was, because it's 17 films happening simultaneously, and all of them are in sync with the song and with each other, so that when you're jumping through the album into one room, and then you move into this room, the character that left from this room is now appearing in this room, and if you go down to that room, it's all timed out. So that was pretty tricky. And but the funny thing was that once I'd sold it in, the only note that I got was from Jimmy Page, and it was this is really funny, but I out of respect, I dedicated one of the rooms to each band member, so like every single one of them. And they were pretty rudimentary sketches at that stage. Like I hadn't really gone into that much detail. And then his note was, I really like it, but John Paul Jones' room is cooler than mine. And it's my band. So if that room needs to be as cool, if not, my room needs to be as cool, if not cooler than his. And then I was like, what? Like, I mean, maybe he was joking, I don't know, but it was just like the funniest note. And I was like, because I was expecting pages of notes from someone. And then everyone's like, yeah, it sounds cool. That's the only note you got. And I'm like, show must go on. And then, and the funny thing was, like, I really wanted to shoot everything live action, but you know, the budget wasn't very high for that, surprisingly. And so I had to shoot the live action all in one day. And so I had to shoot like 7 music videos back to back. And it was all just like single takes. And so like I'd done the same thing, like I'd mapped out everything, and I was just standing behind the camera, and I was just like going, like with a stopwatch going, all right, you're doing this, and you're doing this, and you're doing this, and then you move, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then you're doing this, and then moving around and doing this, and this, and this. And then it was like 45 minutes later, I was like, I think we got it, we've got to move on. And then move on to the next one, and then just like go, and then I had to remember all of the choreography and everything for every single piece, and then work on the animation later. So it was like this total headspin. I was like locked in a room for 3 months, like really lonely work, just sitting at the desk. And the worst thing was, I had one guy actually working with me, Derek Richmond, who was like keeping me company sometimes, and he was great, but at Pretty Bird. And but it was really funny because like when we were doing the animation and getting the coloring and everything, I'd get sent these films at 5 p.m. in the evening, and I'd have to watch them and watch every single second to see what was happening. So this sinking feeling that I felt in my gut when I had to spend the rest of the night every day felt like reviewing things, just like, oh my God, here we go. And I have to like give myself a pep talk. I'm like, it's gonna be okay, it's gonna be okay. And then I like put my headphones on and I'd listen to this song, and the thing was, the song was 5.5 minutes long. So every film, 17 films every night, 5.5 minutes long, every single second, it was like hard going. So like once that project ended and I like re-entered my life again, I couldn't have been happier. I was just like, but then I couldn't hear it. Like I went to a hotel, like when I went to, I don't know, I was traveling somewhere and I heard it and I was like, you know,
it's not like, again, no please.
It was pretty hardcore, but it was a really cool experience as well. And like, I'm really glad that the band did like it and they were like really pumped about it and the label really loved it. And I mean, it's Led Zeppelin. That was like a dream come true. Like even when that brief came in, I remember when I was pitching for it, I was just going to bed at night going, please let this happen. You know, like this, like, please let this happen. You know, and then they're like, oh, they liked it. We were approved. And I was like, okay, good, let's do it.
Hal, going back to VR, how do you think it will affect filmmaking in the future?
I think VR is here to stay in some iteration for sure. I think that immersive film and is just going to get bigger for sure. I think that
more people is adapting it right now, like adopting it.
Yeah, I mean the adoption is just, it will eventually happen. It's been fast and then slow, and there's different kinds of consoles, etc. That, I don't know, it's going to take a little bit of time for sure, but there is so much interest and love and excitement about the industry, and I think that there's insanely smart people just like spending so much time and thought in trying to crack it.
Yeah.
And so I feel as though I have a lot of faith in those people.
Yes, especially, I don't know, it's interesting to see how different all these experiences are, right? It's not the same to be, I don't know, testing it with a phone, right? Or one of these HTC Vives or the HoloLens, right? There are like so many levels of immersion, right?
Yeah, completely. I mean, I think, you know, the phones, even sort of the Samsungs, like the support that they've kind of given it have been great. But unfortunately, because there's so many different companies, all of them are vying for market share. And so they're not all creating for the same medium necessarily, not at the moment. And so it's such a commitment to jump into something like the Vive or Oculus. It's totally worth it, but it's a technical commitment too, because you need to buy a computer and know how to use that, and then you need to hook this thing up. And
I have to make this question, but what do you think? Is it going to merge with the real reality one day or not?
I mean,
everybody is scared about that, but.
I mean, yeah. I mean, according to Elon Musk, you know, he thinks
already there, right?
We're already living in a virtual reality environment. We're at the base level, so yeah. And according to the Matrix, but yeah, I do think that there's going to be a merge, and whether or not, I mean, Facebook's even working on chips that allows you to use their interface without touching the keyboard. There's like eye chips that implant augmented reality full-time in development. So yeah, so I think it's just up to everyone to be responsible with that technology, and hopefully we won't become slaves to an overlord AI.
No, that's okay. And then just getting to the final questions, what is it your current work about? What are you doing with the guys from Here Be Dragons?
Yeah, we're working on a bunch of different things. The good thing about Here Be Dragons is that all of the things that they're creating are so diverse, and almost every project is overcoming new challenges. They're doing a lot of sort of gaming engine, world building stuff at the moment. There's also series that we're working on. So some of those are interactive, some of those are passive. So they're 360. But yeah, it's like it's a really exciting time. There's a lot of new creators that have joined Here Be Dragons as well, and just like it's every single meeting that you go into in that building, when you just start a conversation about something, most of the time you're like, whoa, And that's kind of the most exciting part about it. Like there couldn't be a company with a more appropriate name, because like Hebe Dragons, for those that don't know, was written on the sides of maps where it was like this uncharted territory where no one had been before, and you're assuming, well, don't go beyond there because there's dragons there, right? So I feel like every single project that we've been working on is kind of epitomizes that idea.
You're kind of inventing your own tools and your own genre. I don't know, it's interesting to see like all the different profiles of the people that is working there. Like nobody studied VR anywhere. They're just graphic designers. They come from somewhere else and they're kind of inventing on their own, right?
That's the thing. I mean, VR's been around for such a small window of time that everyone has to have had other skills. And so it's this really interesting industry that's creating this beautiful magnetic pull towards this, like, let's all make within this. And then we've got like insane VFX artists and visual supervisors and VFX supervisors, and then there's like writers and directors and traditional directors, and everyone's kind of merging and going, how do we work together to figure this out? And because I think that, you know, like traditional film, you can pick up a camera and, I mean, look, there's so many different people that are involved in making a film. But likewise, VR is digital and gaming and film and writing and all of these things. And I feel like you can't possibly make one of these things just in isolation. I mean, you can, but to a certain scale. And I think that it's really beautiful seeing all of these different artists come together.
Okay, so we arrived to our last question of our interview. I wanted to know if you had any thoughts about which are the main challenges filmmakers and creators face as they transition from the filmmaking world into the VR world. Do you have like any advice for them?
Yeah, I think that, you know, the challenges are that there's a lot more considerations. There's a lot of unknowns. I think that one of the big things that you face is, especially if you're telling narrative, you think that the narrative is going to be easy to get, but it's not. You know, you really have to think it a slightly different way. But what I'd say is that all you have to do is ask people, and all you have to do is read about it and do your homework. And I feel as though the VR community can be quite open, because we're all trying to make this thing happen, you know, and you know, as a director that came from different, like, hadn't done VR before, you know, like I've managed to figure it out, so everyone else.
It's never been easy. Well, thank you so much for sharing all this knowledge and your passion. It's really contagious. So enjoy your time in Argentina.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. It's like such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.